The desert sun beat mercilessly against the weathered wooden buildings of Redemption Creek, a town forgotten by God and remembered only by outlaws. Dust devils danced across the main street like ghosts of the past, carrying whispers of secrets buried deep in the unforgiving earth. Jake Iron Hand. Morrison rode into town on his midnight stallion, leather chaps creaking with each movement, spurs singing their metallic song against the stirrups. His shadow fell long and dark across the saloon doors where curious eyes peered through grimy windows. The stranger's reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning, a man who could tame the wildest horses and break the strongest wills. Behind the counter of Morrison's general store, Elena Vasquez polished her late husband's wedding ring with trembling fingers. The golden band caught the afternoon light, casting dancing reflections across her olive skin. 6 months had passed since Miguel's death, and the ring had become too loose for her slender finger, sliding off whenever she worked. Yet she couldn't bear to remove it completely. The bell above the door chimed as Jake's imposing frame filled the entrance. His steel-gray eyes swept the store like a predator surveying new territory, taking in every detail. The way Elena's breath caught in her throat, how her fingers instinctively closed around the ring, the slight tremor in her voice when she spoke. "What can I do for you, stranger?" Elena asked, her accent thick as honey, sweet as sin. Jake's gaze lingered on her hands, noting the way she twisted the loose ring around her finger. "Heard tell you might have what I need," he drawled, his voice rough as sandpaper against silk. "Been riding hard for days and my gear needs adjusting." Elena's cheeks flushed pink as desert roses. "What kind of adjusting?" "And the kind that requires gentle hands and patience," Jake replied, stepping closer to the counter. The scent of leather and masculine sweat filled the small space between them. "Some things can't be rushed, Senora. They need to be worked slowly, carefully, until they fit just right." The ring slipped from Elena's nervous fingers, clattering against the wooden counter and rolling toward Jake. He caught it with lightning reflexes, his calloused fingers brushing against her palm as he returned it. The touch sent electricity shooting up her arm like wildfire across dry grass. "Careful," he murmured, his thumb tracing the golden band. "Precious things shouldn't be handled carelessly. They need the right touch, the right pressure." His eyes met hers and Elena felt her knees weaken like a newborn colt. It's too big now," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the desert wind rattling the windows. "Since my husband died, I've grown smaller, and it won't stay where it belongs." Jake's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained intense as a summer storm. "Sometimes things that seem too loose just need the right technique to make them fit again. Or maybe—" He paused, his gaze dropping to her lips. "Or maybe it's time to try something new, something that fits better." Elena's breath came in short gasps, her chest rising and falling beneath her simple cotton dress. The afternoon heat seemed to intensify, making the air thick and heavy with unspoken possibilities. Outside, her neighbor's rooster crowed, breaking the spell that had woven itself around them. I should close the store soon," Elena stammered, stepping back from the counter. "The sun's getting low," Jake nodded slowly, tipping his hat. "I'll be staying at the boarding house. If you change your mind about that adjusting—" He let the words hang in the air like smoke from a campfire. "Some things are worth the wait, but others—well, others shouldn't be left too long in the heat." As he turned to leave, Elena called out, "What's your name, stranger?" "Jake Morrison," he replied without turning around. "I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of each other." Elena Vasquez. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Elena alone with her racing heart and the golden ring that suddenly felt heavier than a millstone in her trembling palm. 3 days passed like tumbleweeds rolling across the desert, each one bringing Jake closer to Elena's carefully guarded heart. He'd taken to visiting the general store each morning, ostensibly for supplies, but Elena knew better. She could feel his eyes on her like the desert sun, intense, warming, impossible to ignore. On Thursday evening, the town gathered for their monthly social at the church hall. Elena had almost decided not to attend, but her friend Maria convinced her that Miguel wouldn't want her to remain a hermit forever. She chose her blue dress, the one that brought out her eyes and hugged her curves like morning mist clings to the mountains. Jake stood near the punch bowl, looking uncomfortable in his clean shirt and pressed trousers. Without his usual leather and dust, he seemed almost vulnerable, though his presence still commanded attention like a stallion in a field of mares. When their eyes met across the crowded room, Elena felt that familiar flutter in her stomach, like butterflies trapped in a mason jar. "Care to dance, senora?" Jake appeared beside her as if materialized from thin air, his hand extended in invitation. Elena glanced around nervously. I haven't danced since Miguel." "Then it's time," Jake said simply. "Some things get rusty if they're not used. Need to be worked back into shape slowly and gently." His choice of words sent heat racing through her veins. She placed her hand in his, gasping softly at the contact. His palm was rough from years of rope work, but his touch was surprisingly gentle as he led her to the makeshift dance floor. The fiddle began a slow waltz, and Jake pulled Elena into his arms. She fit against him perfectly, her head reaching just to his shoulder, her body molding to his like they'd been carved from the same piece of wood. His hand rested on the small of her back, fingers spread wide, claiming territory. "You're trembling," Jake murmured against her ear, his breath hot against her neck. "It's been so long," Elena whispered back. "I'm afraid I've forgotten how." "Then your body remembers," he assured her, guiding her through the steps with practiced ease. "Just follow my lead. Let me show you how it's done." As they moved together, Elena became acutely aware of every point of contact, his chest against hers, his thigh brushing between her legs as they turned, the way his fingers pressed into her back like he was marking his territory. The other dancers faded away until it felt like they were alone under the desert stars. "People are staring," Elena breathed, though she made no move to pull away. "Let them," Jake growled. "And they're just jealous they don't have what we have." "And what do we have?" Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jake's grip tightened, pulling her closer until she could feel the heat radiating from his body like a forge. "Something that's been building since the moment I walked into your store. Something that needs to be explored, thoroughly and completely." Elena's cheeks burned, but she didn't look away from his intense gaze. "I don't know if I'm ready for exploration, man. When you are," Jake said, spinning her slowly. "Here, I'll be waiting." "I'm a patient man, Elena. I know how to take my time, how to prepare the ground before planting seeds. But when the time comes..." He dipped her low, her back arching as she gazed up at him, completely at his mercy. "When the time comes, I'll make sure you're ready for everything I have to give." The song ended, but they remained frozen in position, her body bent backward over his strong arm, his face inches from hers. Elena could feel his breath on her lips, could see the desire burning in his eyes like banked coals ready to burst into flame. "Jake," she whispered, his name a prayer on her lips. "I know," he said, slowly pulling her upright. "I feel it too." As they walked back to the edge of the dance floor, Elena's friend Maria approached with raised eyebrows and a knowing smile. "Elena, aren't you going to introduce me to your dancing partner?" "And Maria, this is Jake Morrison," Elena said, her voice still breathless. "Jake, my friend Maria Santos." Maria extended her hand, which Jake shook politely. "Mr. Morrison, you certainly know how to make an impression. I don't think I've ever seen Elena dance like that." Jake's eyes never left Elena's face. "She's a natural. Just needed the right partner to bring out her hidden talents." Elena felt heat pool low in her belly at his words. Everything he said seemed to carry double meaning, like he was speaking in a secret language only she could understand. "Well," Maria said with a mischievous grin, "I hope you'll be staying in town long enough to help Elena discover more of these hidden talents." "Oh, I'm not going anywhere," Jake replied, his voice a promise and a threat rolled into one. "Yeah, I found something worth staying." 4. The following week brought unseasonable storms to Redemption Creek. Rain lashed against the windows of the general store while thunder rolled across the desert like God's own artillery. Elena found herself jumping at every sound, her nerves stretched taut as a bowstring. Jake had been absent for 3 days, riding out on business he wouldn't discuss. Elena told herself she didn't miss him, but her eyes kept drifting to the door, hoping to see his familiar silhouette. When the bell finally chimed on Wednesday afternoon, her heart leaped like a startled deer. But it wasn't Jake who entered. It was Tom Bradley, the banker's son, shaking rain from his coat and leering at Elena with eyes that made her skin crawl. "Afternoon, Mrs. Vasquez," Tom said, his voice oily as snakeskin. "Terrible weather we're having. What can I do for you, Tom?" Elena asked, keeping the counter between them. "Well, I've been thinking about your situation," Tom said, moving closer despite her obvious discomfort. "A woman alone trying to run a business. It's not natural. You need a man to take care of you, to protect you." Elena's hand instinctively went to her throat, where Miguel's ring now hung on a chain. "I'm managing just fine, thank you. And are you?" Tom's eyes raked over her body like dirty hands. "Because I've been watching you, Elena. I've seen how you look at that drifter Morrison. A man like that will use you up and throw you away like yesterday's newspaper. That's enough," Elena said firmly, but Tom kept advancing. "I could give you security, respectability," Tom continued, reaching across the counter to grab her wrist. "All you have to do is be accommodating." Elena tried to pull away, but Tom's grip tightened. "And let go of me. And now don't be difficult," Tom snarled, his facade of politeness dropping away. "You've been playing hard to get long enough. It's time you learned your place." The door burst open with such force that it slammed against the wall. Jake stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, water streaming from his coat, his eyes blazing with fury. In 2 strides, he crossed the store and grabbed Tom by the collar, lifting him off his feet. "The lady said let go," Jake growled, his voice deadly quiet. Tom released Elena's wrist immediately, his face pale as milk. "Now see here, Morrison, this is none of your business." "Everything concerning Elena is my business," Jake said, his grip tightening on Tom's collar. "And if I ever see you lay a hand on her again, I'll break every bone in your worthless body. Are we clear?" Tom nodded frantically, and Jake released him with a shove that sent the younger man stumbling toward the door. "Get out, and don't come back." After Tom fled into the storm, Jake turned to Elena, his expression softening with concern. "Did he hurt you?" Elena shook her head, rubbing her wrist where Tom had grabbed her. "No, but—" "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't arrived." Jake moved around the counter, his hands gentle as he examined her wrist. "I should have been here. I should have known that Snake would try something while I was away. Or you couldn't have known," Elena protested. But Jake's jaw remained tight with anger. "I'm not leaving you alone again," he declared. "Not until I know you're safe." Elena looked up at him, seeing the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, feeling the warmth of his hands on her skin. "Jake, Thunder crashed overhead and the lights flickered. In the sudden dimness, Jake's face was all shadows and sharp angles, making him look dangerous and wild. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she realized how close they were standing, how his body seemed to surround her like a fortress. "Elena," Jake said, her name a rough whisper. "I can't keep pretending I don't want you. Every day, every night, you're all I think about. The way you move, the way you smell like jasmine and sunshine, the way you bite your lip when you're nervous." As if summoned by his words, Elena's teeth caught her lower lip. Jake's eyes darkened, and his thumb traced the gesture, freeing her lip from her teeth. "Don't," he warned. "Not unless you're ready for the consequences." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. "What consequences?" Instead of answering, Jake cupped her face in his hands, his thumb stroking her cheekbones. "I'm not a gentle man, Elena. When I want something, I take it completely. I don't know how to hold back." "Maybe," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with desire and fear. "Or I don't want you to hold back." Jake's control snapped like a dry twig. His mouth crashed down on hers, claiming her lips with a hunger that had been building for weeks. Elena melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal desperation. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Jake rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as he struggled for control. "Elena," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "If we do this, there's no going back. I won't be able to let you go." Elena reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "Then don't let me go." That night, Elena closed the store early and led Jake to her small house behind the building. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and electric with possibility. Candles flickered in the windows, casting dancing shadows on the walls as they stood facing each other in her modest parlor. you sure?" Jake asked, his voice gentle despite the fire burning in his eyes. "Once we cross this line, Elena, and I'm sure," she whispered, reaching for the chain around her neck. With trembling fingers, she lifted Miguel's ring over her head and set it carefully on the mantelpiece. "I've been wearing the past like armor, but I'm ready to take it off." Jake watched her movements with the intensity of a hawk tracking its prey. When she turned back to him, he saw the decision in her eyes. The surrender and the challenge all mixed together like whiskey and honey. "Come here," he commanded softly, and Elena moved toward him like a moth drawn to flame. Jake's hands found the buttons of her dress, his fingers working slowly, deliberately. "I told you I'd take my time," he murmured against her ear. "I meant it. I'm going to explore every inch of you, learn every secret you've been hiding." Elena's breath hitched as her dress pooled at her feet. "Jake, It's been so long. I don't know if I remember how." "Shh," Jake soothed, his lips trailing down her neck. "Your body remembers. Trust me to guide you, to show you pleasures you've never imagined." His hands mapped her curves like a cartographer charting new territory, each touch sending sparks through her nervous system. Elena had never felt so alive, so aware of every nerve ending, every pulse point where his fingers lingered. "You're so beautiful," Jake breathed, his voice filled with wonder. "Like a desert flower that only blooms in moonlight." Elena's hands worked at his shirt, desperate to feel skin against skin. When she finally pressed her palms to his chest, Jake groaned low in his throat, the sound vibrating through both their bodies. "Careful, darling," he warned. "I'm trying to be gentle, but you're testing my limits." "Maybe I want to test them," Elena replied boldly, surprising herself with her own daring. Jake's eyes flashed dangerously. "Is that so? Well then, let me show you what happens when you push a man past his breaking point." He swept her into his arms, carrying her to the bedroom with purposeful strides. The bed creaked under their combined weight as he laid her down like she was made of spun glass, his eyes drinking in every detail of her form. "Now," Jake said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper, "let me show you how a real man takes care of his woman." What followed was a dance as old as time itself, a give and take of passion that left them both breathless and trembling. Jake was true to his word. He took his time, building the fire between them slowly, carefully, until Elena thought she might die from the sweet torture of it. "Please," she gasped, her nails digging into his shoulders. "I can't. I know what you need." Jake growled against her throat. "And I'm going to give it to you, all of it, until you're screaming my name and begging for more." The storm outside had nothing on the tempest they created together, two souls colliding with the force of destiny. Elena discovered muscles she'd forgotten she had, sensations that made her arch and writhe beneath Jake's skilled ministrations. "That's it," Jake encouraged, his voice rough with desire. "Let go, Elena. Let me hear you sing." And sing she did, her voice rising in a crescendo that echoed through the small house, proclaiming to the desert night that Elena Vasquez was no longer a widow in mourning, but a woman reborn in the arms of her lover. Hours later, they lay entwined in the tangled sheets, their bodies slick with sweat and satisfaction. Elena traced lazy patterns on Jake's chest, marveling at how perfectly she fit against his side, like two pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. "Jake?" she whispered into the darkness. He rumbled, his arm tightening around her. "Earlier, when you said the ring was too loose?" Elena lifted her head to look at him. "Oh, what did you mean?" Jake's lips curved in a slow smile. "I meant that some things in life don't fit until you find the right person to share them with. Your husband's ring was too big because it belonged to your past. But this—" He reached for something on the nightstand, and Elena gasped as she saw a simple silver band gleaming in the moonlight. "This was made for your future. Jake, I can't. It's too soon. And it's not a proposal," Jake said gently, slipping the ring onto her finger. "It's a promise. A promise that you'll never be alone again, that you'll always have someone to protect you, to love you the way you deserve to be loved." Elena stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. It fit perfectly, like it had been made specifically for her finger. "How did you—" "And I had it made by the silversmith in the next town," Jake admitted. "I've been carrying it around for a week, waiting for the right moment." Elena threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the love and gratitude in her heart. "I love you, Jake Morrison." "And I love you, Elena Vasquez," he replied, rolling her beneath him once more. "Now, let me show you just how much." As dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Elena finally understood what it meant to be truly alive. In Jake's arms, she had found not just passion, but purpose. Not just desire, but destiny. And as she screamed his name one final time, her voice carrying across the awakening town, Elena knew that this was just the beginning of their story. A tale of love found in the most unlikely of places, between a mysterious cowboy and a widow who had learned to live again. The ring on her finger caught the morning light, a symbol of promises kept and new beginnings. It fit perfectly, just as Jake had promised it would, just as they fit perfectly together.